So a lot of people right now are complaining about Warsong Commander nerf that just happened, which is super surprising to me. For those of you who don't know exactly what happened, Blizzard has announced they're going to be nerfing Warsong Commander to take it from a 2/3 that grants all your minions that enter play after it with 3 or less attack charge for the rest of the turn, instead to say basically nothing. It's not a card anymore, and this is greatly affecting the most powerful deck that's out there right now, Grim Patron Warrior. Grim Patron Warrior created a strategy that involved around dealing 20 plus damage in a single turn without having any single presence on the board, and we've seen stuff like this in the past with decks like Miracle Rogue and Leroy Jenkins. Now, I'm actually very surprised that anybody is opposed to this nerf whatsoever, but there seems to be 2 major concerns with what's happening here. The first one being the time frame around when it's being nerfed, which is right before the World Championships. We're now giving players about 2.5-3 weeks to prepare to play for a $250,000 prize pool. Certainly a concern that some people have. And the other one is that the skill cap of the game is being lowered right now. That the highest skill cap deck has been taken out, and as a result, there's not really that much of an edge to be had, which is a ridiculous notion considering that we're basically heading into a new format, but I'll get to both of these things in a second. The first thing I want to talk about is the time frame in which Grim Patron, the whole deck is getting nerfed because of Warsong Commander. First of all, there's not really anything wrong with this. Times change, and that's just a fact of the matter. Like, if you take a look at what has happened in the past with things like Reddit, Starving Buzzard, Leroy Jenkins, people were constantly wanting these cards to be nerfed for an extremely long time, and it took Blizzard a long time to do so. So we have a precedent in the past of it taking a long time, but it getting nerfed anyway. Just because something is there already, or is the way it is, or is the status quo, it doesn't mean it shouldn't change. Like, we're in a card game, first of all, so new elements get released constantly, very frequently, very often. They should be getting changed. They should be dynamic. We should do something about it when we have strategies that create these very linear effects that greatly affect deck building, the metagame, how players have to play the game, etc. Like, this isn't just a simple thing where you sit down and go, you know what? I'm really tired of playing against Grim Patron right now. It's a really oppressive strategy, kind of. So let me go ahead and change Warsong Commander because I think it should be changed. No, it's like tons and tons of research has been put into it. The fact that it's taken this long should be the major concern, really. That should be the surprise, and that should be the complaint about it, is why didn't this happen weeks ago or months ago? I don't know, and it doesn't matter at this point. The point is we've arrived at this situation, and the fact that you're concerned because it's changing before the World Championships is just, it's crazy. And there's a couple reasons why. Number one, we're entering into a new format now. Players have to start from scratch, back to the drawing board, figure out what makes the metagame tick. If your argument is that somebody has practiced this strategy a very long time and has mastered it to come to this point, then that just means that their work ethic, their ability to solve these problems should now be what's setting them apart at the World Championships. The second thing that's happening now is the World Championships is giving us a perspective of what the metagame should look like. Ideally, we've collected 16 of the best Hearthstone players in the world to compete at this point, and we're no longer shackled by this deck that is completely warping the format, where every single player's lineup, every single deck choice, every single card choice has to account for one single strategy. It's insane. And the fact that people want it to stay that way for the World Championships is ridiculous. Listen, you remember that creepy guy from Ocarina of Time who tried to sell you those masks that nobody really cared about? Well, imagine that guy instead is trying to sell you a Grim Patron deck that you really don't care about. And he's telling you how fair it is, and he's telling you how it should be this way just because it has been this way. Listen, if this guy wants to sell me a fax machine that comes with pre-nerf cards and pre-nerf strategies and the same old things that we've been set in stone in, we can go back to Adrenaline Rush, we can go back to 2/4 Dalaran Mage, we can go back to 4-mana Leroy Jenkins and 5-mana Gadgets and Auctioneers. Why are we changing it at all? We have a precedent where these things have changed, and these things do change. The fact that we're doing it before the World Championships shouldn't mean anything for you. And then the second argument that I'm seeing that people are really upset about is this skill cap argument, which is just the most ridiculous thing I've ever seen. Listen, skill should be a factor when you play Hearthstone, but there's a lot of different skills that come into it. The one that pros tend to favor the most is in-game decision-making skills. Those should be impactful. Those should matter a lot. But if we take someone who's extremely good at the game and give them the ability to do whatever they want, that's not an okay thing. You shouldn't just be overpowered simply because you're very good. You should be able to get an edge over people who are making inferior decisions. And especially in a card game, where the only real way to separate a bad player from a good player is some sort of variation, or like drawing poorly, or animal companion roles that someone hasn't accounted for, or whatever it's going to be. There has to be something that keeps that edge there and keeps a matter of subtlety so that the better players can figure out what makes them better players and winning players. If you just give everyone every tool they want, nothing ends up happening except that the best player literally wins every single time no matter what, because you can't beat him because he's just that much better than you. Even if you manage to outplay him in a single game, it doesn't matter because he's done whatever he wants by this argument of, we have this super high skill cap deck that's super overpowered, but it's okay because it's high skill cap. Listen, if we teach Gary Kasparov how to play Hearthstone, that doesn't mean that Gary Kasparov should be able to come in, learn Grim Patron Warrior, and then suddenly attach missile turrets to his shoulders and become the Terminator with infrared vision and dominate every single person that he plays against simply because he's Gary Kasparov. That's a ridiculous notion. What players should have to do is figure out ways to tackle the metagame. And now with the World Championships, there's an incredibly high amount at stake, and it's on an incredibly short time frame. In my opinion, the players who are going to adapt better, the players who are going to apply themselves with their work ethic, the players who are the most savvy and can figure out these situations are the ones who are going to be triumphing over it. So for all you guys out there who want to play your Grim Patron decks and all you want to see is Warrior and Handlock and Druid, that's fine. Go back to your 2007 metagame where you only want to see the most powerful strategies over and over again because some guy has mastered how to Whirlwind 3 times in a row correctly, and go play that game, because that's not the game that I want to play. It's not the game that I want to be a part of. And frankly, for everyone that wants to play other classes and wants to see fair representation, now, finally, everyone can get in here.